In 1850, inside the dark underground rooms of the Library of Ashurbanipal in Nineveh, explorers found a round clay disc that has caused a massive fight among historians ever since. This object, known as Tablet K.8538, or the Sumerian Planisphere, is not like the regular square tablets used for writing down taxes or laws. Instead, it is a complex tool divided into 8 sections, looking very much like a modern navigation map. For over 100 years, mainstream scientists at the British Museum have claimed this is just a simple map of the stars as they looked over the Middle East on the night of June 29, 3123 BC. They believe the wedge-shaped marks on the clay are just a record of a meteor falling from the sky. However, when we look at the specific technical notes carved into the clay like a detective at a crime scene, we find a group of words that aren't about just watching the stars, but about actually managing the Earth's environment. In the 5th section of this disc, the writer uses a very rare Sumerian word, Dur-An-Ki, the bond of heaven and earth. While religious scholars think this is just a poetic way to talk about the gods, the mathematical way the word is used suggests something much more physical, a giant, invisible electromagnetic cable designed to keep the Earth connected to the energy in the upper atmosphere. The technical details on tablet K.8538 don't describe a peaceful sky. They record a time when the planet was shaking and the stars were moving out of their regular spots. This is a direct description of a time when the Earth's natural wobble was out of control, causing the North and South poles to shift in a dangerous way. The Sumerians didn't write about this with fear, but with the cold, clear logic of a building inspector. The text clearly mentions the Abzu, which was the underground base of the god Enki, as the power source for the great breath that held the sky in its proper place. Before we go deeper into the engineering of the poles, you need to hit the subscribe button right now. I am dedicated to showing you the archaeological mysteries and the hard facts that prove our ancestors were part of a massive, global engineering project. The Sumerian records tell us that about 12,000 years ago, right after a series of massive global floods and disasters, the Earth's magnetic shield was almost completely broken. The planet's wobble was getting worse, which meant the entire surface of the Earth could have slipped, causing the oceans to wash over the continents. One of the most famous Sumerian texts, the Enuma Elish, contains a section that has been wrongly translated for years as a story about a god creating the world. But when you read it like an engineer, it describes a planetary repair job. It explains the installation of what the Sumerians called shugura, objects that many call crowns, but which the technical texts describe as machines placed at the ends of the world to anchor the magnetic energy. These ends are the North and South poles. The Sumerians claimed that Enki, the lead scientist of the Anunnaki, personally managed the construction of these polar stations. These weren't temples built for singing and prayer, but high-powered machines designed to create an artificial magnetic field. This was a backup shield meant to keep the Earth safe and stable so that humans could continue to live here. It was a planetary fix on a scale we can barely imagine, using the Earth's own internal heat and energy to keep us from spinning off into space. To understand why Enki had to build these polar stations, we first have to look at the Earth not as a solid, unchanging rock, but as a giant spinning machine that was once severely broken. Modern geologists talk about something called axial precession, which is a scientific way of saying that the Earth wobbles like a slowing toy top as it spins through space. While mainstream science tells us this wobble is a natural and slow process that takes 26,000 years to complete, the Sumerian tablets known as the Atrahasis describe a time when this movement became violent and unpredictable. In the second tablet of this collection, the text describes the foundations of the deep being moved, and the bar of the sky being broken, which are technical metaphors for the Earth's axis losing its stability. This wasn't just a storm or a localized flood, it was a geophysical nightmare where the planet's tilt was shifting so rapidly that the seasons began to fail, and the magnetic shield began to thin out, leaving the surface of the planet open to deadly solar flares. According to these ancient records, the Earth was essentially dying because its internal gyroscope was no longer holding its position, and without intervention, the crust would have eventually slipped entirely, wiping out every living thing on the planet. The solution provided by Enki, as detailed in the Lugal-E tablets, was a masterclass in what we would now call gyroscopic stabilization. The Sumerians recorded that Enki traveled to the heart of the world to install a series of massive heavy metal weights and electromagnetic anchors that would counteract the planet's erratic wobble. One specific tablet mentions the term Kigal, often translated as the Great Earth, but in this technical context, it refers to the deep crustal plates that were being pinned into place by Enki's machinery. This matches a strange anomaly that modern geophysicists have found deep within the Earth's mantle: two massive, dense blobs of material located under Africa and the Pacific Ocean that are different from the rest of the planet's interior. While mainstream science calls these large, low-shear velocity provinces and claims they are just leftover pieces of an ancient planet, the Sumerian descriptions suggest they are actually the remains of an artificial balancing system installed to keep the Earth from flipping over during a period of high solar activity. What makes this even more unsettling is how the Sumerians describe the power source for this stabilization project. They claim that the Abzu worked as a giant heat exchange engine, pulling thermal energy from the Earth's core and converting it into a low-frequency hum that vibrated through the entire planet. This hum, which the tablets call the Song of the Foundation, is eerily similar to the Schumann resonance, a global electromagnetic frequency that modern scientists discovered in the 1950s. The Sumerians believed that as long as this song continued, the Earth would remain stable, and the bond of heaven and earth would hold the atmosphere in place. However, the texts also warn that this system requires constant maintenance, and that the gods left behind specific codes, or mi, which were essentially the software programs needed to keep the polar stations running. They recorded that if these codes were ever lost or the machines were deactivated, the Great Wobble would return, the magnetic shield would fail, and the Earth would once again become a wandering star without a fixed foundation. If these giant planetary stabilizers really exist, where are they? The Sumerian tablets are very specific about the locations. They don't describe these stations as being built on the ice, but under the Earth's crust at the exact points where the magnetic field lines converge. In the text known as Enki and the World Order, Enki is described as fixing the borders at the two ends of the world. He calls the southern station the Mountain of the South, and the northern one the Gateway of the North. For decades, scientists ignored these descriptions as myths, but in 2006, NASA satellites discovered something in Antarctica that changed everything. Deep beneath the ice in a region called Wilkes Land, scientists found a massive gravity anomaly. This is a dent in the Earth's gravity field that is over 300 miles wide. Mainstream science claims this was caused by a giant asteroid hitting the Earth 250 million years ago. But there's a problem with that theory. The anomaly is too perfectly circular and sits exactly at a strategic point for the Earth's magnetic field. When we look at the Sumerian descriptions of the southern anchor, they describe a house of the net, Bit Mesu, that was built into the bedrock. This net was likely a massive grid of copper and gold wiring designed to catch and funnel magnetic energy. The Wilkes Land anomaly shows a density of material that shouldn't be there, suggesting a massive buried structure that is actually interfering with the Earth's gravity. Moving to the North Pole, the evidence is even more mysterious. The Sumerian tablets describe the northern anchor as a celestial pillar that connects the Earth to the stars. In the Epic of Gilgamesh, this is referred to as Mount Mashu, a place where the gates are guarded and the sun rises and sets within the mountain itself. While we don't find a physical mountain at the North Pole today, only shifting sea ice, modern satellite data has revealed something called magnetic portals. These are regions where the Earth's magnetic field periodically opens up, allowing a direct flow of high-energy particles from the sun into our atmosphere. NASA calls these flux transfer events. The Sumerians, however, described them as the breath of Enlil, a mechanical opening and closing of the northern shield to vent excess energy from the internal Abzu engine. The architecture of these stations, as described in the tablets, was unlike anything humans have ever built. They weren't made of bricks and mortar, but of vitrified stone, rock that had been melted into glass using high-frequency sound waves. The tablets mention that these walls were harder than iron and could glow with their own light. This explains why modern radar systems often struggle to see through the ice in these specific locations. The material of the stations is so dense and reflects energy so perfectly that it looks like natural bedrock to our current instruments. But why keep these stations hidden? The Sumerian records state that Enki veiled the stations so that the unworthy could not interfere with the planetary balance. Today, both poles are protected by international treaties and strict military no-fly zones. In Antarctica, the South Pole Station sits almost directly above where the magnetic flux is strongest. While officially a place for climate research, whistleblowers from the IceCube Neutrino Observatory have reported detecting massive pulses of energy coming from deep within the ice, pulses that match the rhythmic hum described in the ancient Sumerian texts. We aren't just looking at ice and snow, we are looking at the roof of a global power plant that has been running for 12,000 years. To understand how the polar anchors stay powered for thousands of years without any visible fuel, we have to look at the Sumerian description of the Abzu as a technical facility rather than just a mythical place. In mainstream history books, the Abzu is called a watery abyss, but the Sumerian tablets found at Eridu describe it with the language of a high-tech power plant. The Temple of Enki was called the Abzu, which means House of the Deep. However, the tablets say this house wasn't just a building on the surface. It was the entrance to a shaft that went miles down into the Earth's mantle. The Sumerian records state that Enki used the Abzu to purify the Earth's energy, which is a technical way of describing how a geothermal engine harvests heat from the planet's core. Modern science tells us that the center of the Earth is a giant ball of liquid iron and nickel that is as hot as the surface of the sun. This heat creates a geodynamo, which is the process that generates our magnetic field. The Sumerian tablets, specifically the Enki and Nima text, describe Enki steering the currents of the deep to create a glow that could be felt across the world. When we look at this through the lens of physics, it sounds like he was managing the liquid metal currents in the Earth's outer core to boost the planet's magnetic output. By tapping into this nearly infinite heat source, the Abzu functioned as a global battery, sending low-frequency electromagnetic waves through the Earth's crust, straight to the anchors at the North and South Poles. In 2014, researchers found a massive reservoir of water trapped 400 miles underground in a mineral called ringwoodite. This hidden ocean contains 3 times more water than all the surface oceans combined. The Sumerians wrote about this exact discovery 5,000 years ago, calling it the sweet waters of the Abzu. They claimed that this underground water wasn't for drinking, but was used as a coolant for the massive energy system Enki had built. Just like a modern nuclear reactor needs water to keep from overheating, the planetary stabilization system needed this deep crust water to balance the massive heat being pulled from the core. The tablets describe a very specific process where this deep water was vibrated to create a high-pressure steam that drove the great wheels of the Abzu. It is a perfect description of a binary cycle geothermal power plant. This system would explain why ancient Sumerian cities were always built near massive temple complexes that had deep, unexplained wells and strange plumbing systems that led nowhere. These weren't for religious rituals. They were the venting pipes for the geothermal engine running deep below the city of Eridu. If this system is still running, it would mean that the heartbeat of the Earth, the Schumann resonance, is actually the sound of Enki's engine. The Sumerians recorded that this engine produces a specific frequency, a sacred hum that keeps the human mind in balance. They warned that if the Abzu were ever to clog, or if the water levels were to drop, the power to the polar anchors would flicker. This would cause the Earth's magnetic shield to weaken, which is exactly what we are seeing today with the South Atlantic anomaly. If these ancient machines are still running deep under the ice, why haven't we seen them on the news? The answer lies in a series of accidental discoveries that have been quietly buried in technical reports for over 30 years. In the early 1990s, a group of geophysicists conducting a survey of the Earth's magnetic field at the North Pole noticed something that didn't make sense. They expected to find a smooth, natural flow of energy. Instead, they found a geometric pattern, a series of pulses that were perfectly timed, repeating like a heartbeat. When they tried to publish their findings, the report was suddenly retracted. The official reason was instrument error, but one of the researchers later claimed that the signals weren't coming from the Earth's core, but from a specific solid object buried miles beneath the seafloor. This heartbeat of the Earth is something the Sumerians described thousands of years ago in the Lugal-E tablets. In these texts, the god Ninurta goes to war against a monster named Asag, which was said to live inside a mountain and cause the Earth to tremble with its roaring. When Ninurta defeats the Asag, he doesn't destroy it, he binds it and forces it to vibrate at a specific frequency to stabilize the foundation of the world. Modern scientists have found a real-world version of this roar. It's called the global hum. It is a low-frequency sound that can only be picked up by specialized sensors, and it seems to be coming from the very same polar locations where Enki's anchors are supposed to be. One of these zones is located directly over the Wilkes Land anomaly. In 2002, a satellite called GRACE detected a massive mass concentration under the ice that was producing its own gravitational pull. Shortly after this data was released, the area was designated as a highly restricted zone, but independent researchers believe NASA is using advanced ground-penetrating radar to map the internal structure of Enki's southern anchor, a structure that is reportedly made of a non-natural high-density alloy that blocks almost all standard scanning waves. Even more strange is the role of the Ice Cube Neutrino Observatory at the South Pole. On the surface, it's a telescope looking for tiny particles from space, but technically, it is a giant cube of ice filled with light sensors that go 2 miles deep. In 2018, the observatory detected neutrinos coming up from the center of the Earth rather than down from space. This should be impossible according to standard physics. If the Abzu engine is as active as the Sumerian tablets claim, it would be producing exactly this kind of high-energy particle as a byproduct of its geothermal power process. The Ice Cube Observatory isn't just looking at the stars, it is monitoring the exhaust of an ancient planetary machine that mainstream science is terrified to acknowledge. The reason for this silence is simple. The existence of these machines would prove that humanity does not own the Earth. The Sumerian tablets say that we are tenants on a planet that is being managed by a much higher intelligence. If the public knew that our magnetic shield, the only thing protecting us from being fried by the sun, was being controlled by an ancient non-human technology at the poles, the entire world order would collapse. We are told that the Earth's magnetic field is failing because of natural cycles, but the Lugal-E tablets suggest a different truth. They claim the shield only fails when the maintenance codes are lost. By keeping these stations a secret, world governments may be trying to figure out how to bypass Enki's security systems and take control of the bond of heaven and earth for themselves. The most chilling part of the Sumerian tablets is not what they say about the past, but what they warn about the future. According to the Enki and the World Order text, the planetary stabilization system was never meant to run forever without a manual reset. The tablets explain that the me, those biological software codes that keep the polar stations running, have a specific shelf life. The Sumerians recorded that these codes would eventually wear out or become corrupted, causing the machines at the poles to slowly lose their grip on the Earth's magnetic field. When this happens, the tablets describe a period where the heavens become loose and the north moves to seek the east. This is an incredibly accurate description of what geophysicists are watching happen right now. The magnetic North Pole is currently moving away from the Canadian Arctic and racing toward Siberia at an unprecedented speed of 34 miles per year. It matches the Sumerian prophecy that the anchors would shift when the maintenance period ended. But in the last 2 decades, that drift has turned into a sprint. If the North Pole reaches a certain tipping point in Siberia, the Sumerian records suggest the entire magnetic shield could undergo a rapid flip, or a geomagnetic reversal. During this flip, the Earth's protection from the sun would drop to almost zero for a period of several years. The tablets call this the time of great darkness, a period when the sun devours the Earth's breath. In modern terms, this means solar winds would strip away parts of our atmosphere and collapse our entire electrical grid, throwing humanity back into the Stone Age in a single afternoon. But the Sumerians also provided a reason for why this system was designed to fail. They claimed that the stabilization machines require a quantum recharge that can only happen when a specific celestial body enters our inner solar system. This body is the one Sitchin called Nibiru, but the Sumerian tablets simply refer to it as the radiant star of the crossing. The text explains that this object carries its own massive electromagnetic field, and as it passes by Earth, it acts like a wireless charging pad for the Abzu engine. The tablets describe a spark jumping from the sky to the Earth, which would reactivate the polar anchors and repin the planet's axis for another 3,600-year cycle. This suggests that the current collapse of our magnetic field and the rapid movement of the poles are actually a signal that the recharging object is getting closer to our orbit. Mainstream astronomers have recently started to admit that something huge is lurking in the outer reaches of our solar system. They call it Planet 9, a massive world that is 10 times the size of Earth and follows a long, egg-shaped orbit. While NASA claims they haven't officially found it yet, The gravitational pull of this object is already affecting the orbits of everything in the outer belt. The Sumerian tablets say that when this master planet becomes visible in the southern sky, the gods will descend to the house of the deep to perform the necessary maintenance. This implies that the Anunnaki never truly abandoned Earth. They simply put the planet on autopilot and left for a time, knowing that the laws of physics and orbital mechanics would eventually bring them back to perform a system restore on their global engineering project. If the Sumerian tablets are correct, we are currently living through the end of a maintenance cycle. The strange noises at the poles, the upward neutrinos detected by the Ice Cube Observatory, and the weakening of the magnetic shield are all symptoms of a machine that is running out of power and waiting for a restart. We are not just watching climate change or natural cycles. We are witnessing the planned expiration of an ancient life support system. The tablets end with a message of both warning and hope. They state that those who understand the me will not be afraid when the sky changes, for the return of the master will bring a new era of stability and knowledge. Whether you believe these tablets are literal history or just advanced science fiction, the data is piling up in a way that is becoming impossible to ignore. The clay does not lie, and the Earth's own magnetic field is telling the same story that was written 5,000 years ago in Mesopotamia. And if you're ready for the truth about our forbidden history, make sure to subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.